Hello there. What's going on, everybody? Today we're going to do some community talk, and I am talking with Harry Nick today, and we're going to be just kind of talking about X-Wing, talking about all things about his channel. If you're not familiar with, we're going to link to that also in the description below. But with that being said, I want to welcome you, Nick. How you doing?
G'day, how you going, mate? Yeah, pretty good, pretty good.
All right, great. So I just kind of wanted to start this whole thing out, and just kind of, if for anybody who's not familiar with your channel, although I would guess quite a few are, tell us a little bit about yourself and your channel, and kind of what got you started into making content for games like X-Wing and these Fantasy Flight games.
Well, a while ago, I was actually just doing like general Let's Plays, like videos, and then I just made a side channel called Harry Nick, sort of like referential to my other channel called Those Hairy Gamers. So that's why my name's Harry Nick on YouTube.
All right.
Just making videos about like articles FFG were putting out about X-Wing. And that ended up taking off like way more than the video game stuff. So now I'm just doing that. For the past 2.5 years, or 1.5 years, I don't remember, I've been talking about X-Wing on YouTube. I've just made another side channel sort of for everything that's not X-Wing related, mainly Legion at this point. Made a video on Outer Rim and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm very much into X-Wing. I'm very much a fan of game design in general, so I like to do like deep dive stuff on analysis of cards and lists and that kind of thing. That's my jam. Yeah,
absolutely.
Sure.
That's one of the things that I think caught my attention with your channel is how deep you're able to go, and I envy that because I started out just doing X-Wing also, and as I've broadened myself, I feel like it's like that scene in episode 4 where Leia says, the more you tighten your grip, the more star systems will slip through your fingers. And like there's, especially as X-Wing has grown too, it's become, it started to become more difficult to really home in on, have that same level of scrutiny on every single card when there's thousands of cards and in millions of combinations. To stay up to speed on everything can be really difficult. Do you find that difficult at all, or?
I love it. I'm thinking like towards the end of first edition where everything just became so bloated and patched and everything. Like people like me who are really invested in the game that follow everything to a T, I didn't have much of a problem with that. But at the same time, you take a step back and go, oh, hang on, this is really inaccessible for those people over there. And that's, ultimately why they went to second edition. And yeah, I really appreciate like the game design behind it, and when you sort of step back and have a look at what they did, I can understand why first edition got to the state it's in. I can understand why they need a second edition, why they've made the decisions they've had, and yeah.
All right. Well, so you talk about second edition. That's one of the things that I wanted to talk about because that's definitely been the biggest thing to happen to X-Wing in ever. I think it's probably the biggest thing to happen to X-Wing ever.
Agreed.
Although you could probably make an argument that Epic was the biggest thing to happen to X-Wing, but that's just that's being corny. But no, so it absolutely was. That one took me by surprise for sure, especially going back from everything from the hyperspace report that was supposed to talk about all games, and it was like a bait and switch, and it turned out it was only about X-Wing. And
yeah, that's right. I remember that.
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny because I don't want to say too much, but I had an idea of I used to playtest, and it's okay for me to say that. I don't anymore, but so I knew some things that were coming, but I had no idea. So I thought I was like in the know, and that one completely took me by surprise. And so that was really fun when it came out. And at the same time, there were so many things that, as a person that kind of talks about like, hey, there's this new article, here's these previews. One of the things that really bugged me about that was the lack of points and upgrade slots on all the cards. How do you how did you deal with that? Do you feel the same way, or?
Well, there's two key things about any sort of card upgrade pilot, whatever, that you have to pay attention to whenever it's revealed, and that's the power level and the design. And you can't really talk about power level when you don't have points, but you can talk about design. And that's honestly what I'm mainly interested in. I really like sort of really janky design that FFG put into their game, and I tend to get sucked up by all of that, but not really. I think one of my main weaknesses when evaluating stuff is not paying attention to the stuff the tournament spikes do to break cards. And I think that's more related to the points. That's more like, hey, if you line up the points this way, you can get these things in combination, and that's just dumb and broken.
Right.
Yeah, my main thing is design, and honestly, like you can talk about that without points.
There's a lot you can. One
sure.
of the things for me is like the upgrade slot. So if I had a wish, like I would wish that they would maybe make the pilot cards double-sided, with like maybe the one side being as is now, but on the other side being like, and here's our first draft, so we expect this ship to have an astromech, because like that's a great example. If a ship has an astromech slot, that drastically changes some of the tech that can go into it, and it can also interface with those built-in abilities that it has, etc. If you see the dial, like if it's got a bunch of like red twos, then all of a sudden an astromech might be a huge big deal for so like I look at things like that. And also it helps you list build, and you can't list build at all until you've got the points and that like the day it launches, which makes it kind of hard to list build. But
yeah, for sure. I mean, the advantage of that is for us commentating on it, we get a chance to review a card when it's revealed, and then again when the points come out.
That is a good point. Love
doing that.
That's all right. So that's fair. That's a really good point. Maybe I haven't done that as much because like I had been out of X-Wing for a while when 2.0 came out. And I'm curious if you've run into this. One of the problems, I was actually very frustrated for a long time when 2.0 first came out, and it was a lot of little things. And it was like I think it began to avalanche. So one of the first things, and this is just a silly thing, but I would get so many cards from 1.0 confused with their 2.0 counterpart. Like the biggest one for me was fire control systems. For the longest time, I would put that on a ship in 2.0, and I would try to get a target lock because I had years of playing. Like how long did you play 1.0 and did a lot of that stuff get confusing for you at first?
I think it was more terminology that got me confused. I still occasionally say pilot skill.
Okay.
In fact, if you ever watch one of my videos and you see a hard cut when I'm talking about initiative, that's probably why.
Absolutely.
I started early 2016, so 1.0 is very much ingrained in my head. I think in those circumstances, like in the specific example you're talking about, fire control system, it sucks for us existing players who still make those mistakes, but we also have to appreciate there's people entering into the game. And I think having more balanced cards in the long run is probably a more important thing for the health of the game. Like not to discredit what you're saying.
No, absolutely. And I know, and I recognize it was a silly thing. It's just like one of many. So I had a lot of those little things. I think that the biggest thing that turned me off to 2.0, and a lot of this has to do with the fact that I'm on social media so much, is that confusion for certain terminology, like you were saying, with the front arc symbol. Like I had this huge problem. The front arc symbol could mean 3 different things depending on context. So if you see that symbol, it might mean enemies that happen to be in your front arc, or it may mean any shot that comes out of your front arc, or it may mean, to quote some Legion terminology, like a fixed front primary weapon, right? And the biggest offender here, I think, was when the RZ2 A-Wing had, on one of the quick builds, had outmaneuver, but yet the ruling was that you couldn't use outmaneuver or you can equip it, but it couldn't function with the RZ2 A-Wing because it didn't have a primary fixed front weapon. It had that back and forth turret, when, like, logically, it seems like the design was intended for it to be able to use outmaneuver, but by their own ruling, So, like, that's when I think I kind of hope that gets FAQ'd, because it's, by every account, I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be able to take it. But little things like that were just confusing me and making me think, man, am I getting out of touch with this game? So I took a little break, and I think, which brings us to Wave 3. And I'm curious to get your overall reaction on that. I mean, I know you've done plenty of videos about it, but, just to talk kind of candidly, like, what do you... for me, Wave 3 has been like a huge hit because it just everything in these new factions is there. All right, like, what are your thoughts for like the new factions? Now we're up to 7. At Wave 3, like, what do you think?
I love it, man. Again, I'm really more focused on design than anything else, and Wave 3 is just hitting home runs in terms of that. The Vulture Droids, the Jedi Starfighters are just so fascinating to me. I know there's always the discussion, did they make this too expensive, or these configurations of Jedi Starfighter too expensive? Like, I completely get that.
And those could be adjusted too.
The design on them.
Yes. And if it's too expensive, that could be fixed.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I remember having a conversation like way back on the channel about should they add Clone Wars in, and that was back in 1.0, and I was like, no, we can't do this now. And I get the impression that part of making second edition was so they could do this, because you look at some of the design choices with the Clone Wars factions, and these are just things that could not have existed in first edition. The presence of force tokens, calculate, how they interact. I love how force tokens can be used as a resource to do actions.
Oh, it's fantastic.
The Jedi Starfighter. Vultures are really cool. They're the one thing I've had a chance to actually probably playtest, and I love them. I really do love them.
I actually what I've done since X-Wing second edition launched is I transitioned over to buying only one of any given item. I used to buy about 4 of every given item, just to give you a context.
Yeah, and you unbox everything. I've noticed that.
I do. Except for the maneuver dial upgrade kits. I have no place in my life for those, because since I have everything, I'm not going to be able to upgrade every single dial, so it's futile. I forgo those. Although I even did as an April Fool's joke one time, I did a dice unboxing, because they sell the dice kits. I think it was for Imperial Assault, and it was very subtle. And I'm like, oh, these are fantastic dice. You can really tell by looking at them. It's the same dice everybody has.
Yeah.
But no, I'll do a lot of that. But I actually went and bought a second Vulture droid, because I'm going to try and see if I'm holding off on the third, because I think 3 is the sweet spot, because you can get the what am I thinking of here? The buzz droids. The Discord missiles. Yeah. And so I think 3 is the sweet spot, and combined with the 2 from the starter, that's good. You could potentially get more. Which brings me to another question. Do you think they're going to change? There's a line in the rulebook that says you have to have between 2 and 8 ships for a legal list, which means a lot of people when the points were first dropped, there was like, wait, but we can fit 10 Vulture droids in a list. So does that mean we can only get 8? Do you think they're going to fix that, or do you?
No, I think that was intentional. I think they made that rule knowing that Vulture droids are going to come out, and I honestly look at the rules overhaul for the start of second edition and Clone Wars, and I reckon they knew everything that was going to happen up to Clone Wars, and I think 8 ships is intentional. I really don't think they wanted 10 Vulture droids on the table.
Granted, when Epic comes out, I'm sure you'll be able to run more than 8. Again,
yes, absolutely.
But yeah, so I think so. I think that's a good point. Although I wouldn't mind. I could see perhaps for maybe having a distinction between hyperspace and extended. Like maybe extended will allow you to go up to 10, and hyperspace might be 8.
That's a really good point, actually.
Yeah, because I think at some point they're going to, from a business standpoint, they're going to be like, hey, we could get everybody to buy 2 more Vulture droid expansions if we just change this one rule. Okay, boom, and then a sales spike. So from a logistics standpoint, I could see them eventually doing that. But
absolutely, yeah, for sure.
And their cheap cost still lets you have a swarm, like when you can have like a Grievous and still a swarm that you could still fit a lot with because they are so cheap. So they're pretty. I do like the networked calculations ability for them too. And it looks like the bombers are going to have the same ability, right? Which is really, which brings me to the thing. Like these factions seem like they're getting an identity, right? Do you agree?
Yes.
Or,
yeah, big time.
Yeah.
That was something that was majorly lacking in first edition.
I agree.
Especially like Empire and Rebel. They just got so confused, and they did so much of what the other faction did. And the Scum faction was the one with the strongest identity because it came in so late.
Yes,
and
I agree.
Now we have 7 factions that all feel pretty tight.
Yeah, and I think that's going to grow too. I don't know if we're going to get a whole lot more for like the Rebels and the Empire in the in the next like wave or 2. I think it's going to be focused more on filling out those new ones. But yeah, I think there was a lot of like cross hybridization between. It's like, oh well, the Empire has the only ship that can cloak. Well, we need to make sure everybody else has that, or we need to make sure other people can do this. How come the Empire doesn't have any ships that have turrets? Oh well, let's give the Empire a turreted ship, and there was just more of that. So I think when the game was brand new, it was more like the Empire had the swarms and the Rebels had the aces, and it grew and it got bigger and bigger, and it kind of blended in too much, and that's a good thing for 2.0.
And that's a constant criticism I always hear is like, well, my faction is terrible because it doesn't have X. And I think what people have to appreciate in those situations is, no, your faction is awesome because it can do X, X, and X that faction can't do.
Right.
That's a key part of identity. It's not about just trying to copy what all the other factions do.
So, so Wave 4, I don't know. What do you? Let me ask you this. Wave 4 looks pretty cool. What are you most excited about? If you had to pick one release from Wave 4.
Well, I'm a Scum Resistance and Separatist player myself. I don't know enough to comment on the transport, but it looks awesome. The small base ship, it's got an astromech. Yeah. It's got some really cool iconic characters in there. Yeah. But that hyena bomber, man, it looks really good.
And that's a prime example where it would really help if we could see the upgrades, because like, is it going to have like 2 missiles and 2 torpedoes, or is it going to, I don't know if it'll be that much. I have a feeling it'll be a little more bare bones, but yeah, exactly.
I have a feeling it had barrage rockets on the spread. I don't remember, but yeah, it definitely had torpedoes and that kind of stuff. What I love about the hyena bomber, and you compare it to like the TIE fighter and TIE bomber, is the hyena bomber has network calculations, and
yeah, that is cool.
So if you don't have like all the ordnance, or it's not working that turn, it means it functions like another vulture droid in the turn that is not firing ordnance, and that makes it really cool. That makes it very unique and fits right in with that faction. So that really interests me as a ship. It come down to how much it costs, obviously, but I like the idea of something that can be a bomber or just be a vulture droid, if it's efficient enough to do both. We'll see what happens there.
So speaking of those roles, I think one thing in 1.0 is that like I think there became a sort of a lack of a distinction between torpedoes and missiles. Like they each had so many, and that they didn't really feel different enough. And so as I've kind of dived back in with Wave 3 and kind of come back into X-Wing, that's one thing I noticed, because I was like, oh, well, these vulture droids, they can take missiles, so it doesn't matter if they only have 2 attack. And I realized, oh, the missiles aren't all that great. It seems like the torpedo, especially the proton torpedo, is like, that's what I would have loved to give my vulture droids, but that's probably...
You don't want to put 12 points in a vulture droid.
But they're so cheap that if you gave all of them, you could still probably, if you were lucky, you might end up with one heck of an Alpha Strike. But
that's true. Torpedoes are now like that sought after thing, not just, it's just a different option. And missiles have a bit more versatility, but a bit less impactful overall. But no, sorry, they are a lot less impactful overall.
Oh yeah.
So on the vulture droids, they have like energy shells. You can take.
That one's not bad. I like that one. That one's pretty good. But it's only got the one charge, right?
Yeah, but it can reload. So yeah. And clusters and all that kind of stuff. Clusters are a very interesting place right now because of the existence of vulture droids, and because of the prevalence of TIE swarms, because they're actually seeing meta play now. So yeah,
very cool.
It's not just better. I mean, you spend a lot more points on proton torpedoes, but nevertheless, they are like so dominant right now as well. Like they went up to 12 points. Doesn't matter. They still see play.
And that is a really cool thing. I think that's a great way when you have so much stuff out there. You've got like 14 waves of 1 point of content already available. Especially with the conversion kits, that you don't want people to just say, no, I'm only going to fly decimators and TIE advanced or whatever. You don't want one thing to just dominate, and through these points you can just be like, all right, sure, you can still fly that, but it's gonna you're not going to be able to put any upgrades on them, or whatever. Like, and they've done that already. So that's a really great way to kind of force people into change. Although I will admit I've had a little frustration, because I thought when 2.0 first came out, I'm like, look, I'm going to build these 2 lists. And when it's time to play, I'm just going to take my list and go, because you can spend days just list building. And I just didn't have the time to do that. And then the second time I went to go try and do that, the points had adjusted, and my list was now like 240 points. And I'm like, I can't even, this isn't legal anymore. I have to go back to the drawing board. Yeah. So that is a fun little tidbit.
Well, that first points change was like 4 or 5 months after the release.
Right. So that tells you how often I was playing.
Yeah. At least we have a 6-month gap between the next one.
Yeah.
I've had this conversation, like, how frequently should these be? I actually err on the side of these should be more frequent, because I think 6 months it's too long for problematic things to stay in the meta. But the flip side is, people that don't honestly play all that much, and look, I don't play all that much. I maybe play like once a fortnight or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I get that frustration too. So it's about finding that balance.
Sure. And I think one of the things that I would like to see in the future is to have, I mean, it might even, and I hesitate to say this, but it might even involve a new format where the points are a little bit more static and only change like once every year or two. And you call it the casual format or something. Like maybe casual is a little too sensitive for some people, but in other words, it's just like that open format where you can, like these are the points and you can just make this list and this will always be your go-to list. And we're not going to change the points on that. We're not going to change the upgrades. If you really love flying, Dengar with, proton torpedoes, and you can run that. We're not going to change it like what happened, especially with the 1.0 version of the Jumpmaster and the way they changed all of that, which was I think one of the biggest driving points to, hey, we need some way to fix this instead of having to do hard errata. So
imagine if we had this when the Jumpmaster was doing what it was doing.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the points and the upgrades is exactly what they changed.
That was one of the reasons I slowed down playing X-Wing 1.0 and started playing games like Armada and, not Legion at the time, but started playing other games a lot more, is just because you would show up to play and everybody was so competitive. And that was kind of a bummer.
I actually started playing in shops just when the Jumpmaster came out, so
okay.
That was X-Wing for me.
So I came in about Wave 3, and Wave 3 had just come out, so I didn't have that much to buy to get totally caught up. But we used to play at one of my local stores every Sunday, and it was just casual play. I didn't play in my first tournament for a couple months, and I just had a lot of time of just playing casually, and I quickly fell in love. But then when once that meta started to get really competitive, it was just such a shock to me. I'm like, I just want to play to have a good time, but you were like win at all costs, and some people would get so upset too. And it was interesting seeing like some folks were like totally cool, and they'd remind you to do something if you forgot. Like, hey, you didn't do your action? Do you want to do your action? I'm like, oh, this is a tournament. You're reminding me? Well, thank you. And like that was the beauty of it. It's like there's a lot of, and there's a lot more of that than there is of the other type, I think.
And I think in general, X-Wing, I don't know, I can't talk about your X-Wing community, but here in Australia, here in Melbourne, we're usually pretty cool. And you compare it to other games and you actually appreciate how cool this community is. Like, in just like little things like that, like, hey, you remember that trigger? Like, oh, cool, thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a good thing. I think it helps you grow as an individual too, because I think there was, for me, there was a lot of, I was very shy before I started into tabletop gaming. I used to only play video games, and there's something, that's a little antisocial about just being behind a screen, being, listening to people shout obscenities about your mother over the internet. So when you
I've been there.
Yeah, it's a little too common, and maybe it's a fact of me growing older or whatever, but so like going to stores and like meeting new people and having to actually socialize, I think that was one of the great things about this hobby, and it's become a gateway into a lot of other games, and I think it's definitely helped me come out of my shell. And I hear that from a lot of people too. So being really cool to people, because I think when you're playing in communities, you tend to run across those. You can kind of tell when somebody like has just kind of gotten into the hobby and they're still really shy and standoffish. And having a great community really helps people like that more so than anybody else, I think.
For sure. And you were just talking about video games. Which,
yes.
It's just the community with video games is just so gargantuan, and you get a bit of everything. Like, I also play Magic the Gathering.
Okay.
And that community is enormous. So you get everything. You get the really cool guys, and you get the guys that you don't want to get pet up against, that kind of thing. And you just really appreciate it. And I always try to inject that sort of attitude in every game that I play. And it's so nice when after a game your opponent goes, "Oh, thanks for being so cool." It's like, "Oh, okay, well, I wasn't trying to be, but awesome."
Sure. My concept has become, if you can't lose and also have a great time, then you're playing the wrong game. Because
absolutely, that's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
So let's talk a little more about X-Wing right now. With one of the things at Adepticon, there were two big things that they talked about at Adepticon. Is that Wave 5? They had nothing to say about it, but they're going to announce that at Celebration, and that Epic is coming. So they said a few things about Epic, like it's supposed to be really fun, which of course you kind of would expect them to say. But Alex Davies said it, and I tend to believe him because he's got such a zest for these games that he works on. Like, I wish I had that kind of passion when I go to work in the morning, because I'm just like a zombie when I go to work. But so I'm excited. Is there anything that you were hoping that Epic is able to do?
I regrettably didn't get to play much Epic when I was playing First Edition, so I don't really have a lot to comment on there. In terms of the design of cards coming in, I really like what they did with energy. Like, I have no qualms with that basically coming in verbatim what it was. But I just hope they go somewhere new with that. I hope they, Epic was to First Edition this great format with this new mechanic that allowed you to have a big ship that could shoot multiple times, which was awesome. I hope they managed to capture that sort of really cool new design space with Second Edition. Like, it can't just be the
thematic
same thing. It's got to actually, it has to offer something new. I think that's the key thing.
I think they hinted that there was going to be some thematic aspects to it, and some. So it makes me think. Have you ever played Armada?
No, I haven't. I would love to. It's just one of those.
Well, you come to Orlando, we'll square you away. But,
okay, no worries.
But one of the things they do there is they have objectives, and that kind of redefines each match. So, like, if you were playing, to put in X-Wing terms, you're getting ready to play, and then you flip over a card, and it's like, oh, well, the first person to blow up this asteroid gets a victory token, or something like that. Now it changes your strategy, and so you have to be prepared for multiple strategies. And so, I expect they may do something like that with Epic, and maybe the capital ships will be a little bit more well prepared to deal with objectives, and maybe tankier and stuff, rather than the actual dogfighting ships. This way, it lets your ships lets your fighters do what they need to do, and it lets your capital ships kind of serve as a home base for them to accomplish the mission. It sounds like something I would like. That would feel a little more thematic, and would also take one thing away from the hyper competitiveness. Is the first Epic tournament I went to, I remember I was running across people that said, well, I'm not going to field any Epic ships because they're not as game winning. They're point sinks, and they look cool, but they're more fun than they are competitive. So I'm just going to run like 12 Y-Wings with twin laser turret and fill up all 300 points that way, and just completely destroy everything guaranteed with that guaranteed damage. And it was like, okay, well, you just ruined this format. Thank you very much. And and I think that's why Epic never took off.
Yeah, that's against the ethos of Epic, I feel. But don't you need to have a certain amount of Epic ships?
Well, that's the problem. There wasn't a rule that said you had to.
Oh, okay.
You had a cap of how many you could have. You could have 5 points, and the bigger ship was 3 points, and the smaller ship was 2 points. And so it's going to be interesting. It's also going to be really interesting to see if they're going to do Epic ships for all 7 factions now, and if they're going to stick with that same formula of like 2 Epic ships per faction, or if they're going to even expand upon that. Like, will the Rebels get a Hammerhead Corvette, or I don't know. At a certain point, it's like the big things to produce can be kind of complicated. So I don't know.
I don't think every faction needs the same amount of Epic ships. In fact, I wouldn't be annoyed if Scum didn't get any more, for example, because it's not really indicative of the Scum faction, and they already have so many large base ships. They can pretty much make up the difference anyway. But things like Epic ships on the Separatists, for example, like what could we do with tactical relays and ship abilities and that kind of stuff?
Yeah,
that'd be.
And they might have like in energy will probably function very similar to. I almost feel like energy was a blueprint for the Force. Because having that extra currency, it was beautiful. It's very well done. So I think they're going to do something like that. But I'm excited about that. I like the real big ships. I like having a giant game. Every once in a while. As much as I like the competitive nature, I think I'm a little bit more cinematically motivated, and that's one of the things I think that pulls me more towards Armada.
Absolutely, and I think that's a key thing FFG should be looking at. The game is so competitive focused. They should be paying attention to things like Heroes of the Artillery Cluster.
Yes.
That kind of stuff. Like, I can't believe they're not looking at that and really considering things like that. I think they should. It would be good for them if they did.
I think there was some talk that they had possibly talked to somebody about that, or maybe they figured, the community's already running with this. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, so we'll let them keep doing it. But I would love especially if they were to produce it. And get your whole kit in like a production quality box, and you had all your materials, because I've got some friends that can make like print and plays, but make them fully production quality material, like the thick cardboard stock and everything. And I've seen Atari Cluster, builds that would rival an FFG product. So like if they were to do it, I'm sure they could do it really, really well.
Absolutely. But the key problem with that is they can't just take someone else's game design. There's a lot of copyright laws around that.
The lawyers will prevent them from doing a lot of the legalese is a killer for so many things. Got any Wave 5 predictions or hopes?
Not really. I don't want any more factions at this stage, that's for sure. I mean, I've been saying it since I started this channel. I want the Gauntlet Fighter on the Scum faction. I know, guys, I know it's too big. Shut up, I want it.
I don't think it is too big. It might be an epic ship, though.
Yes, the size indicates that it would be epic. However, its function within a battle indicates that it would be a fighter. So make of that what you will. It's physically, it pancakes out larger than a Ghost. But FFG have been, funny with the scales before.
They have. Do it again. I think the Moldy Crow kind of seems like it's still on that funny side. But yeah, I hear you.
Is it too big or too small? I didn't know that.
I think it's in a tricky place because I've seen some people say one way, some people say the other way. I know when I look at the ship and I compare it to like an X-Wing's cockpit, I'm like, there's no way you're going to fit multiple people in that tiny little cockpit and have a cargo hold. I feel like it should be bigger, but by certain blueprints, it's the right scale. But by other game scenes, like if you go back and watch Dark Forces, and it just feels like it should be bigger than it is. But I mean, again, it's a freighter. But it's the same size as an X-wing. You're not going to fit cargo and smuggling stuff in it.
It's so ill-defined in terms of its lore. It was originally meant to be something the Rebellion produced to have a low-profile personnel carrier, and then later it became this thing which like bounty hunters used. And now in the new EU, it appears in a Kanan Jarrus comic, like as a one-off thing, and we just don't know.
That's right. It was like a gray one, wasn't it? Yeah,
something like that.
It wasn't the Moldy Crow itself, but it was definitely
no.
Yeah.
By the way, anyone watching those what Marvel are doing with the Star Wars comics is awesome. Absolutely worth checking out.
Oh my gosh, I was buying some of those for a little bit. So we could talk. Let's talk overall Star Wars for a little bit, because the comics were actually really, really cool. I liked the Vader series, and up until they did the Vader Down, and you got that quote that a lot of people have imitated, where Vader's surrounded by all those rebels, and he's like, "I see nothing but fear and dead men," and I was like, "That is amazing." They really are doing a lot of really cool things, but for budgetary reasons, I had to stop buying all the comics because I was going like, I'm gonna get all Star Wars, then Vader, and then Leia, and then Lando, and I'm like, okay, that's too much. It was too much. So I bought I think the first year's worth, and then kind of cut myself off. But I've heard, and through the internet, you can kind of stay up to speed with the story arcs. Yeah. So
absolutely, yeah.
Very cool. Are you excited about any of the potential? What are you looking forward to out of Star Wars Celebration? Because we're expecting an episode 9 trailer, The Mandalorian, Clone Wars boards, maybe something of the other from Disney Plus. Maybe I think there's other shows and other movies that are coming out too.
Well, I don't think I absorb this content as much as you do per se.
Okay.
I've been enjoying Resistance. We had a chat about this on Twitter just recently. Like, it would have been cooler if they focused on a few different things, and I'm curious about the direction of that show. So there's not much to say apart from.
Well, I do expect they're going to have a season 2 trailer for Resistance, and
nice.
Yeah, that's the rumor, and so I watched Resistance with my children, and I didn't have very high expectations for it because I figured it was going to start off kind of like Rebels did in a sense, in that it was geared towards children, and it wasn't going to take itself too seriously. And I think it pretty much met my expectations. But I'd say towards the end of the season, it really started to ramp up. And I don't want to give away spoilers to anybody who hasn't seen it, but it does look like season 2. It's really going to pick up. It's
hopefully go for those more adult themes. Given some of I'm not going to say anything, but given some of the things that happened in the last couple of episodes, this could have a bit of a turn where it's not just so much for the kids anymore. On that note, I feel like Rebels, and even to a certain extent Clone Wars, did that better. I don't know what it is about Rebels, but even though the first few episodes did feel very much like a kid's show. I mean, they literally call Ezra a street rat in the first episode. I love that. But I'm at the right age. I loved Aladdin when I was a kid, so I'll let that go completely. I don't know. I always felt very invested in the characters in Rebels, and that really, that just kept me with the show. I never felt bored watching Rebels. I have to say, with Resistance, not so much. Like, there's an episode where Kaz watches the part store. I'm like, okay, cool.
I feel like there were too many filler episodes, but because it was a kids show and it was also the first season. I was like, I'm just paying my dues here. I've had so many shows I watched that I did not enjoy for a long time. The reboot of Doctor Who. I don't know if you've ever watched Doctor Who, but for a whole first season, I didn't like it. And then, like, as season 1 wound down, I was like, oh my gosh, there was so much that was going on. I wasn't paying attention to the whole time, and then I was hooked. So, like, sometimes it's worth it to just at least do the whole first season and then see. Usually,
I can't do that. Which I guess is actually a compliment to Resistance, because the fact of the matter is I didn't love the first season, but I still watched it. Like, there are shows people talk about where, you got, by season 3 or 4, it's incredible. I just think, I'm not doing that.
So when you watch a show like Resistance, are you kind of on the lookout for new ships that might show up in X-Wing at some point?
No, always.
Yeah, for sure. I do the same thing. I'm like, wait, what was that? What was that? Like, and I'll pause. I like try to freeze frame and go back. I'm like, wait, that's a TIE intercept. Wait, that's not a normal interceptor. Like, that first episode, I was like, what is that?
Yeah, basically the first few episodes, we get everything in terms of ship content that we get for the whole season, which is nice, I suppose. We don't have to wait too far to see all that kind of stuff. I love the look of that First Order interceptor. I mean, I think it's only a matter of time before we see that one in the game. The pirates are another big one.
Yeah, there was a lot. There was a lot of, especially that epic pirate ship they had too. Like, that could, we were talking about epic, right? That in theory could be an epic ship for, I mean, I don't know if it would be Scum or if it'd be First Order. I don't even know where that fits.
Oh, it'd have to be Scum. Anything that has like,
well, a pirate ship would, by definition, have to be Scum, wouldn't it?
Yeah, like really questionable morality. They keep switching sides. That's got to be Scum. That's got Scum written all over it. It's kind of weird because they have guys standing on top and sails and stuff like that. So is it like an in-atmosphere kind of thing?
I think I would venture to guess that they can go out of atmosphere and they just have to go below decks when they do, like kind of like a submarine in a sense.
Yeah, you couldn't do that stuff in a movie. That has to be in a kid's show.
Yeah, that would definitely. Yeah. So Scum is in an interesting spot because you've got the vast majority, almost all of Scum is during the Galactic Civil War. Right, it's all there with the Rebels and the Empire, but then you've got that quad jumper from the sequel trilogy with the tech slot, and I'm like, oh wait, so is Scum's going to span? That makes you think, all right, so if we see pirates from Resistance, they should also go in Scum. But then you think, like, wait, how are they going to do with bounty hunters? Also, like Jango Fett, was he going to also be Scum? Because there's a big part of me that thinks maybe he should be separatist because he was working distinctly for them, and for balance purposes you probably need a little bit more ships in the separatist. You can't just have Scum have 50 ships, so so that's, I don't know, that's my thought, but I'm not sure. We're gonna have to see. It's very interesting. But I am with you on, let's not have any more new factions for a while,
for sure. You were just talking about the Clone Wars stuff with Scum. It's so much of it could just go on the Separatists, like what's it, the Rogue class Starfighter?
Cad Bane, right?
Yes, also the Magna Guards. So what do we do with that? I think like you'd probably just put Cad Bane on the Separatists for that reason.
Sure.
But yeah, the Fire Spray with Jango Fett. Do you really want a Fire Spray on the Separatists? Is that going to break what the factions are doing? I already think the Separatists in some ways feel like the Scum faction. I mean, the Sith Infiltrator feels like a Scum ship, like just a big dumb thing with 1,000 slots. Of like, that's Scum, but it's also got Force, so maybe, I don't know. I'm just speculating, but yeah, for sure.
But then it looks like an Imperial. It looks like the V1 with the wings.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's a Sinar ship, so yeah, I know. There's so many. Yeah.
How much are you liking the new production quality of all the moving parts and the miniatures now? Like, you're really getting a better object now, right?
Oh, for sure. And the paint job as well. Like, just so tight right now. I remember back in first edition, it was the wave where the quad jumper came out, where you look at the model and go, "Oh, okay, well they've just overhauled everything." I feel like that's just happened again with the start of second edition, where they've remodeled the Y-wing. The TIE Silence is going to be new and more to scale, so I'm really curious to see.
Oh,
like that'll be a very telling thing.
Yeah, I'm
because
really curious.
That ship's what only like 15-ish months old, like just over a year. So that's going to be a real telling thing about the production changes from first, second edition. For sure.
Have they said? And I may be behind on this. Have they said what size base the silencer is going to have?
Small base.
It's going to be small base, though. So okay.
Yes,
okay.
and more to scale. So I think that means it's smaller off the top of my head.
That's what I would guess, because based on the size that it is now, it feels like you could put it on a medium base and it wouldn't feel that out of place. So a small base would make more sense because especially the ships it flew next to in formation.
Yes, for sure. Function over form, it functions like a small base ship. Completely agree.
Okay, great. All right, so let's see. Have you seen? So let's talk about non-X-wing for a little bit. Other board games. Do you have any other board games? I see Heavy Hitters behind you. GKR.
Oh yeah,
Hitters. Yeah. So
I just bought that.
Oh,
I've just
you?
unboxed it. I'm working on an unboxing video for my side channel, actually.
Okay, fantastic. Well, you guys check that out. It's the production quality for that game is insane. So that'll be a really nice unboxing.
That's why I wanted to buy it, because I'm a big fan of the Lord of the Rings movies and basically everything Weta does, and like they made a tabletop game. Well, I'm buying it. I don't care what it is.
Yes, they actually have a new one right now on Kickstarter called District 9 for the movie District 9. It just launched, really? I think, yesterday. So I was just like you. I'm like, all right, it's going to be an instant buy for me. But I looked at it and that one I don't know if I can. I don't know. It doesn't look like the gameplay is there for me. So, and I don't want to buy a game just because it has miniatures. The gameplay at least has to be halfway there for me. And doesn't. For
sure. Well, Heavy Hitters is a bottom-up design in that they design the concept and everything from the ground up. Where District 9 would be, okay, we have a concept, now we have to reverse manufacture it into a game.
Yes.
And that's when game design can get a little bit tricky. Mind you, that's the same thing with all the Star Wars stuff with FFG and.
That's true.
No complaints about those.
So what is some of your other, do you have any other, like a favorite board game, like outside of X-Wing or anything like that?
I don't play as many board games as I like. I actually just moved into this house just recently, and I used to live in a tiny apartment where I couldn't host any board game nights or anything like that kind of stuff.
So we'll go with GKR for right now? By
pretty
default?
much.
Okay, all right.
Pretty much. I just bought where is it over there? Just Fog of Love, just sitting right next to it for my girlfriend for her birthday.
All right.
So I got to try that out some stage. I'm into card games like Magic the Gathering and that kind of thing. I play a lot of that. And that's honestly pretty much it. Those and a few computer games. That's what I'm mainly into. But like board games is something I'm looking more getting into.
Well, excellent.
Outer Rim's coming out soon.
That's what I was. This was a lead in to talk about Outer Rim a little bit. So
cool, good to know.
That was So
very subtle. Well done.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm very excited about that. I had talked about for a long time. There's a game Rebellion. It's also a Fantasy Flight game, and it's a great game. But they say it's a 2 to 4 player game, but it's not. It's a 2-player game. It's just Empire versus Rebels, and the system says, well, you can share the control of the Empire with a buddy, and then they can share control of the Rebellion. And it's like, okay, so we're playing checkers, and everybody gets their own piece. Is that it's still a 2-player game. And so, but Outer Rim is a truly multiplayer game, and so it's like everybody is their own, character flying around space trying to collect the most bounty or in infamy. You can play as good guys or bad guys or whatever. You're all scum and trying to get the most notoriety. So, I would definitely recommend that one. It looks really, really fun. And
big time.
Yeah, and hopefully I'll actually. So that's one of the things I'm looking forward to for Celebration is looking to be able to get. Even though I'm going to be working, I'm going to try to still get a demo and of Outer Rim. So that one should be fun. So you talked about your other channel. Tell us what your other channel is that you're doing other non-X-Wing related game stuff for.
Okay. So basically on the main channel, I have in the past spoken about Legion and Keyforge and just a little bit about other games as well. And I found whenever I did that, the views weren't so great. People sort of come to my channel and they expect deep dive stuff on X-Wing. So as a result, I just said, well, you know what? Why would I jeopardize the views on my main channel? Like, why would I? Because I think a big part of the YouTube algorithm, and I don't know how true this is, but it's just what I've experienced. You make a video that doesn't have as many views, it seems to impact the rest of your channel, like until you put out another X-Wing video. So I've made a separate channel just for all that stuff because I don't want to stop talking about that stuff, especially Legion. I really, really love the game. It's such a larger barrier of entry because of all the painting and everything, but just playing the game, it feels at home as playing Game of X-Wing once you've gotten to that stage, and that's one of the reasons I love it so much. And I've tried to get into like miniature soldier games before, but nothing has really stuck as much. I used to play like Lord of the Rings when I was a teenager, for example, back when the movies were coming out. So that gives you a rough idea of how old I am. So yeah, talk mainly about Legion, and basically this channel is just a place for me to do whatever I want, just kind of see what sticks. Without having any sort of potential negative effect on the main channel. That's basically my thinking.
And maybe someday that one will grow up and become the main channel, and
exactly.
Yeah, you never can tell. Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, Legion, super. I mean, it's going to be growing a tremendous amount. I mean, they've had such a fast release schedule for Legion. Like 2 expansions every month. I think, or almost. I think 1 month it was just 1 expansion, but yeah, it's crazy how fast. They're putting out content, and it's been just out for a year, and now we get the Clone Wars. Have you seen the Clone Wars announcement for Legion? What are your thoughts on those new factions?
I did a whole video on it, dude.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I know that you have, but I'm also asking because it's on my note card here. So,
yes. The key things for me with this is not actually the content, although that's awesome. The 2 big things for me is the upgrade card pack and the hard plastic. The upgrade card pack, I really hope FFG, and I think FFG are doing this because they want to see how it works in this game. Legion is a fantastic space to test things in because it's such a new game, and basically all the players are fresh. It's not like just chucking something into X-Wing where we're all veterans and we all understand it. Well, a large portion is anyway. So you put something in Legion, it's like, hey, this is a true reaction of how new players interact with this kind of stuff. And it's something we've asked for so long. Like, if we had this in first edition of X-Wing, that would have been fantastic.
Oh, yes.
I don't think it's as impactful now in second edition of X-Wing because everyone's got conversion kits and squad packs now, so we have all these generic cards. But even so, there are a few key cards that we do need more copies of, like Spare Parts Canister. You get 1 copy of that in the Republic squad pack, and I don't know why they didn't put in the Jedi Starfighter pack. That's kind of annoying.
Another option, like dark side force powers for people that can go over, like Maul with Ezra, or you presumably, I think it's fair to assume that some version of Anakin Skywalker is going to be able to have a special ability that you can give him dark side force powers. I would guess. I mean, that makes intuitive sense to me. So I'm guessing Ezra won't be the only case. And I would even go so far as to potentially say, if they do Quinlan Voss from some of the books, and he's kind of walked that line as well. And so and vice versa, you could also have certain dark side users that might want to use light side force abilities too, like Asajj Ventress in the books becomes a little bit more nice. And so you could. There's space for that, and an upgrade card pack offers things like that as well.
And once these things become so widely available, you can experiment with those kind of design spaces. So absolutely big time. Also the hard plastic. Ooh, yes.
Oh yes, and so that's you mentioned barrier to entry too. I wonder if this is a case, because I don't have all the notes of every word that they said during this panel, but I believe the gist of it was, for Clone Wars, it's just going to be the droids that are in the sprue. So you'll have to actually cut them out with the harder plastic, and they're in the frame, so you're going to have to clip them and then glue them together and build them.
Yes, but they want to make everything hard plastic eventually. That's the idea.
Focusing on they want to. So I think I think what it's going to happen is they're going to gauge the feedback. I'm like, all right, what does everybody think of this? And if they notice like 90% of their new players are avoiding the droids because they don't want to have to do that, then that's going to probably impact. All right, well maybe we won't go with hard plastic for everything. But if they see like, all right, people love this, and we've pulled in a lot of 40K players to now like, all right, the miniature quality is now up to my standard, and then by all means, full steam ahead, and let's go.
Just on the barrier of entry with the droids, if they were done with the softer plastic, apart from a few other things, because there's so much less mass in the droid, it results in more like flashing and stuff like you have to trim off. They might be more deformed as a result because they're so skinny, and those things actually cause issues as well. So
that's true. That's a good point.
You're trading off for those issues, and I've still, from the video the other day, I've still got my Imperial Royal Guard with the squishy little staffs and everything. It's like, I hate dealing with that, man.
Well, the hot water trick works. If you boil some water, get it really hot, but it's not quite boiling anymore, you stick it in there, that's going to do it. I've played so many board games that have miniatures that are, and a lot of just regular board games that have a lot of miniatures. They're able to kind of skimp on the quality because, hey, this board game has 100 miniatures in it, and so they don't have to have them all super high quality.
That's fine.
Yeah, but
there's a distinction between board games and minigames.
Absolutely. Although I will say, for certain companies, that distinction is becoming more and more narrow because some of the quality is just getting up there and up there. But definitely, that softer plastic is a true problem, and I love what they're doing because it's really, I can't wait to get my hands on a Grievous and figure out all the different ways I want to pose them. They said ball joints in the so you can like, I want the arms like straight out, or however. I did a little bit of 40K, and I liked the building, although I will say it was more time intensive. So I might be more reluctant to really build a true droid swarm because I may have to take a month off of work to actually put them all together. So,
yeah.
Do you have a favorite faction for either Legion or X-Wing? Well, we talked about X-Wing already, but I guess for
Scum
Legion.
for X-Wing, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. What about Legion so far? Or do you
look. One of the first toys I got when I first got into Star Wars as a kid was an AT-ST. And that was one of the first things released in Legion, so I just said when I saw it, nah, I'm in Empire all the way.
Okay.
And the cool thing about that is I get all my Scum units on the Empire, which is really cool.
That's true.
Like Boba and Bosk and all them.
And they said, Sue, that they would like to make more factions for X-Wing too, like these, I'm sorry, for Legion as well. And so that implies that providing the game continues its success, this won't be the end. I'm wondering now if, like, do you think that they will consider doing a Scum faction, considering that they're kind of doubling down on, no, we're also going to put Bosk, and and like it's like, all right, so you're continuing to put more bounty hunters in the Empire.
I think it's less likely. I think it's more appropriate in X-Wing than it is in Legion. Legion is about those core armies. Mm-hmm. And from that point of view, it doesn't make sense so much to have, the hodgepodge of Scum things we have in, like, you look at X-Wing, we got like Mandalorians and bounty hunters and all kinds of stuff crammed together on the one faction. That'd be kind of weird in Legion. They're not really a cohesive army. Right. I think so. From that point of view, I think like Mandalorians or something would be a more realistic thing. Although that is a more niche interest that people like us would love, but maybe not the people who just know the movies a little bit would be into.
But maybe next year, once the Mandalorian show comes out, if that, depending on interest with that could actually open up a whole lot more stuff that's now canon and pop culture accessible. So that might be a future faction.
Yeah, and then we could look at things like Pre-Vizsla and Maul and something like that, like leading a Mandalorian army. That'd be nice.
That would be pretty cool. I know a lot of people who would jump all over that. That would.
Wow. Me too.
You're making me think. Now you're making. I'm gonna totally lose track. All right, so we're gonna probably wrap this up. Let me see. So we talked about Celebration. We talked about you got any high hopes for Episode 9 by chance?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of what Disney are doing with those core movies. I know a lot of people aren't, but you and like you and me, like, I'm happy to say, like, yeah, we like The Last Jedi. We talk about it, that kind of thing. Putting JJ back onto it. I just hope it's not as derivative of, I guess it would be Return of the Jedi as The Force Awakens was of A New Hope. I don't think that ruined The Force Awakens by any stretch of the imagination. I still think it had really cool, interesting characters, and their arc was really interesting. So, the whole plot of the movie being a bit derivative didn't spoil that, but I really hope that it does go somewhere different, and we conclude a Star Wars trilogy on, we establish this as something completely different from the old trilogy, the prequels or whatever, and I think that's the key thing. I think that's the key thing. Yeah.
The only thing I want to have, there's certain things I do want it to borrow. I'm hoping it ends with a sense of like feeling triumphant. I want it to end on a good note, like Return of the Jedi did. I'm hoping for, and I think it's likely to expect a really epic space battle, because that's my favorite part of Star Wars is the big space battles. And it stands to reason you've got to wipe out the First Order's fleet, because if they're still out there, then the trilogy's really not over, is it? So
yeah, for sure.
So
at the end of the prequel trilogy, the original trilogy, well, it just all goes bad again, and we have another war in the next trilogy. So perhaps, there should be a bit more of a sense of finality. I don't know if Disney want to do another trilogy. I think
I've heard different things, but I don't.
Let's focus on other things before that. But then again, one bad movie and they stop doing like the side movies and all that kind of stuff. So
I didn't have any problem. Right now. I didn't dislike Solo. It just wasn't for me. I thought it was actually a really well done movie. Personally, I didn't like the fact that I knew Han Solo, Chewbacca, and Lando were going to be safe the whole time. So I wasn't like they're never really in danger. So that wasn't for me. But objectively, it was a fantastic movie.
Putting it out in the same month as Deadpool and Infinity War was a really bad move on Marvel, Disney's part.
I think had they waited till December, that would have been.
I remember thinking, last Christmas period, hey, if Solo would be coming out right now, and given a lot of people didn't like The Last Jedi, and people were still sort of grumpy about that by the time Solo came out. I think just keeping it to December, keeping it to that that big Hollywood blockbuster, holiday blockbuster kind of thing. Yeah, that's probably what they should have done in the end. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm not sure about in Australia, but I know here in America, and forgive me if this sounds a little strange, but movie theaters are open on Christmas Day, so it's a lot of families after they're done doing their Christmas morning stuff, a lot of people will well, we ate. What do we want to go do? Let's go watch a movie. So that's a very common thing to do, and not having a Star Wars movie out that month is for me. Christmas is very Christmas and Star Wars go hand in hand. I don't know.
I don't know actually. I've never tried to. Well, but we make a big deal about Boxing Day being the day that movies come out and we go and see them. Star Wars has always been a week before Christmas Day,
right? But in case you hadn't gotten to see that, I imagine you're probably going to go see a new Star Wars movie on opening day. I always try to. But then again, some people aren't movie theater people. They don't like the crowds. So, all right. Well, it's April's going to be a big month for Star Wars news, and we're going to get Wave 5 in about 2 weeks. So that's really exciting.
It is that close, isn't it?
It is about 2 weeks away. I'm really hoping for the new Y-wing design, since you kind of got that preview of it in the art, and throughout X-Wing's history, they've been a fan of teasing future ships in the background art. But they've also been misleading sometimes too. But we'll have to see. So if I were a betting man, I'd bet for the Y-wing.
Cool.
All right. Well, I think we're gonna wrap it up. We'll put a link down. Go ahead, check out Harry Nick, and we'll put a link to both of your channels as well, so people can check out. If you're interested in X-Wing, Harry Nick is definitely the channel. Legion and other gaming stuff. What was the name of that channel again?
Extra Hairy. Go to the link. Don't search Extra Hairy on YouTube. You get some pretty funny results.
Fantastic. And with that, we're going to go ahead and sign off. I want to thank you all so much for watching. And as always, have a great day.
Have a good one, guys. Thanks for that.